The news that the Marquis of Yongan was taking a second wife had spread throughout the capital for 3 days when the Marchioness of Yongan visited my small shop. I've heard that this face-changing pavilion can alter one's appearance. Would the owner be willing to take my request? I looked at the Marchioness's blooming, flower-like face and smiled softly. The rule of the face-changing pavilion is that we charge no fee for beautifying a face. But the face you replace must remain here for my use. The lady softly responded. The face-swapping procedure required 7 days, and the lady couldn't stay away for long, so I disguised myself as her newly purchased maid and moved into the Marquis's residence. Little did I expect to encounter a strange coincidence at the Marquis's residence. The secondary wife the Marquis of Yongan was about to marry, the lady's long-lost younger sister who had recently been found, was a client of mine who had undergone a face swap. She had taken on the identity of the person whose face she had replaced. I took a wriggling GU worm from the box and confirmed with the Lady of Yongan one last time. This face-changing GU can only be used once in a lifetime. Once the appearance is altered, it can never be changed back. The lady's tone was resolute. Change it, I will not regret it. I shook a sharp needle from my sleeve and made a cut below the lady's ear. The GU insect in my hand, drawn by the scent of blood, crawled through the cut into the lady's fair, pale skin. The lady's raven feather-like eyelashes fluttered slightly, and her pale red lips pressed tightly together. I couldn't help but feel pity for such a beauty and asked her, "I have some miraculous pain-relieving medicine there, no charge. I can give it to you for free." As early as when the lady came to me with the request for a face swap, I made it clear to her the pain she would endure. The process takes 7 days in total. For the first 5 days, the face-changing GU worm would burrow into her skin, gradually separating it from the flesh and bones from the inside. That is the first type of pain. In the last 2 days, when the original skin completely falls off and the new skin covers the face-changing GU worm secretes a corrosive fluid to dissolve any ill-fitting bones. That is the second type of pain. At the time, the lady was so frightened that she bit her lip until it bled. Yet now she resolutely refuses my help. Her voice trembled slightly. I want to remember this pain well. Only when it hurts enough will I no longer think of turning back. The guests who come to the face-changing pavilion usually do so to evade their enemies or to acquire a more beautiful appearance. Only the lady was different. When I asked her how she could bear to part with such a breathtakingly beautiful face, she said, "To escape. For freedom." I couldn't help but be curious. What kind of bondage could make the pampered lady of the Marquis household willing to endure unbearable pain just to break free? To keep a constant watch on the GU worm's condition, I took the place of the lady's personal maid and entered the Marquis household. At night, as she was preparing to rest, the Marquis of Yongan arrived. It was widely rumored in the capital that the Marquis of Yongan was a rare romantic among the nobility, deeply devoted to his wife and never allowing other women to get close. I stood by, glancing sideways at this so-called romantic who disregarded his wife's dignity to take a second wife. He had high-set brows, deep-set eyes, a straight nose, and thin lips slightly downturned. His face was handsome, but his entire demeanor was too cold and stern, giving off an air of heartlessness. His voice was even colder, sharp enough to freeze the air. "How much longer are you going to keep making a scene with me? I was originally engaged to Ninga. It's only because of our childhood friendship that I didn't demote you to a concubine and instead let Ninga suffer as a co-wife, and you're still not satisfied. She is your own sister. You've already taken her position as the principal wife. What more do you want to argue with her about?" The lady bit her red lip slightly, her face showing no anger, only disappointment and sorrow. "Don't forget, it was you who said you were fond of me back then and begged both families to let me take my sister's place in the marriage and marry you. If you think the position of principal wife should be hers, you can simply divorce me." I never intended to compete with her for anything. The Marquis of Yongan faltered slightly, his tone softening a bit. "Do not deliberately say hurtful words to provoke me. Your parents have not been kind to you. Where would you go without me? Moreover, I could never bear to treat you that way. Bringing Ninga into the household is only to compensate for the suffering she endured during her years of being lost. It will not affect the bond between you and me." The Marquis Manor will always be your home, and I will always be your husband. These two things will never change." He spoke these tender words softly and reached out to embrace his wife. The wife lowered her eyes and remained motionless, like a wooden statue, offering no response in his arms. The Marquis of Yongen tried to coax her a few more times when suddenly a maid's voice came from outside the door. "My lord, our young lady is having a nightmare and keeps crying out your name. Please, go and see her." Upon hearing this, the Marquis of Yongen didn't hesitate for a moment. He immediately released his wife and hurried out the door. Only when he reached the doorway did he remember to turn back and explain, "Ninga isn't like you, raised in luxury and comfort. She's spent many years wandering outside and has grown timid and fearful. I'll go check on her and be back soon." After the lady nodded, he strode away without looking back. The words she murmured to herself were only heard by me, standing beside her. I too grew up in constant fear and trembling, yet no one has ever felt sorry for me. That night, the Marquis of Yongen did not return. Starting from the next day, as more and more of the GU worms were stripped from her flesh, the lady felt increasingly intense pain, yet she remained as calm as if she felt no pain, a lifeless calm, as though there were little vitality left in her. A maid entered from outside to announce, "Madam, Lord Yi and Lady Yi have arrived. The Marquis asks you to meet them in the main hall." I supported the madam by the hand and followed her to the main hall. As soon as we entered, two elderly people in their 50s glared at us with anger. Lady Yi was the first to ask, "Xuanshu, I heard that Ninga was plagued by nightmares last night. Wasn't the reason we let Ninga move into the Marquis residence early so that you could help her regulate her health, as her elder sister? How exactly have you been taking care of your younger sister?" Lord Yi followed closely behind. "Didn't you study medicine under the divine physician? Why haven't you cured your sister's nightmares even after she has been living here for so long?" The lady said helplessly, "Father, mother, have you forgotten? Last time, I prepared a calming and nourishing medicinal soup for my sister, but she refused to drink it. She even cried and screamed, accusing me of trying to poison her. Because of this, the Marquis scolded me as a venomous woman and confined me. You also personally came to reprimand and scold me for an entire day. Not a single one of you believed me, so how could I dare to intervene and help treat her illness again?" As soon as she said this, Lord Yi and the old lady were both left speechless. The old lady snorted coldly and said, "I think you just resent Ninga for coming back and taking your position as the Marquis's wife. So you deliberately stood by and watched her suffer from nightmares. Don't forget, you were the one who took her place. It should have been returned to her." I saw what seemed to be tears glistening in the lady's eyes, but she blinked them away. With trembling fingers, she pointed at the two of them and said, "You heard my sister say she admired the Marquis, so you tricked me into bringing him home. You even drugged him to create a scene of intimacy between the Marquis and my sister, and deliberately arranged for me to witness it. This caused me to miscarry in shock and anger, while I was recovering from the miscarriage. You came to my door every day, ignoring my grief over losing my child, and pressured me to agree to my sister marrying into the Marquis's household, all because you believed I had taken her place. Is that right?" The elderly Lady Yi retorted, "Isn't that so? If you hadn't taken the husband who rightfully belonged to Ninga, and then stubbornly refused to let her marry into the Marquis household after she returned, causing her to lose her appetite and weep all day at home, your mother and I wouldn't have resorted to such extreme measures. As for the child in your womb, it was your own misfortune and inability to protect it." The lady clenched her hands tightly, her eyes red as she questioned, "I clearly said I would willingly step down and give the position of the principal wife to my sister. So why did you refuse?" Lord Yi flicked his sleeve and rebuked, "What a scandalous disgrace it is for a married daughter to be cast out by her husband's family. You may not care about your reputation, but your mother, sister, and I still do." This statement was almost an outright accusation that the lady had no shame. The lady's figure swayed unsteadily, and I quickly exerted strength to steady her. The Yongen Marquis, who had arrived belatedly, happened to hear this last sentence. Seeing the lady's pale and fragile face, a trace of pity flickered in his eyes as he comforted her. "Since I married you, I never once thought of divorcing you. You will be mine for the rest of your life. The reason I care so much for Ninga is also because she is your sister, and my love for you extends to her. Old lady Yi scolded the madam, as her elder sister. You have failed in your duty, forcing the Marquis to take care of your sister for you, instead of being grateful to him. You dare to throw a tantrum over this, so unreasonable and ill-mannered. Agreeing to marry such a jealous and immoral daughter into the Marquis household in the first place was our mistake, and we have wronged Huaishou. The madam closed her eyes, as if disgusted by them, and turned away to retch. Seeing this, the Marquis of Yong'an's expression changed, and he pushed me aside to support his wife by the waist himself. What's wrong? If you're feeling unwell, why didn't you say so earlier? Had I known, I wouldn't have let you go out to entertain your parents. After saying this, he scooped his wife up in his arms and hurried back to the inner courtyard, not forgetting to instruct me to call for a doctor. Lord Yi and Lady Yi left with grim expressions. The Marquis of Yong'an stayed until the physician had taken the lady's pulse, and only left after hearing that she was not seriously ill. It wasn't until there was no one else in the room that I finally had the chance to voice the questions in my heart. Madam, were those two elderly people just now your parents? The lady's eyes dimmed as she gave a slight nod. I was shocked. Are they really her biological parents? Judging by the way those two were insulting her, the lady didn't seem like their daughter, but more like an enemy. The lady let out a bitter laugh. I'd rather I weren't the biological child. Before long, another guest arrived in the room. As the maid announced her, a beauty in a green dress gracefully entered the bedroom. Her voice melodious and captivating. I heard my sister is ill, so I came to see. This must be the lady's younger sister, who went missing at a young age and was only found after growing up. I looked up, and my pupils suddenly contracted. This person was a customer who had visited the branch of my Jianzhuang Lu in Jiangnan. The reason I still remember is that the face this customer wanted to change was exceptionally beautiful and charming. Coincidentally, I happened to be traveling in Jiangnan at the time and, fearing that the staff might lack the skill and ruin such a lovely appearance, I personally performed the procedure. I searched my mind for information about the person in front of me. She was originally the Madam of Huayu Tower, already 32 years old. She had brought the body of a beauty who had just stopped breathing but hadn't yet lost its warmth. Offering her entire fortune to buy the chance for Jianzhuang Tower to perform a face swap, the face she had swapped was exactly that of the 17-year-old fresh beauty before me. Perhaps because my gaze lingered too long, the beauty glanced sideways at me. I smiled respectfully and immediately lowered my head. I entered the Marquis's residence in disguise, and the person before me didn't recognize me. The Rouge Pavilion has always only taken orders without asking about the guest's whereabouts. Even if I happened to meet her today, for the sake of the guest's privacy, I wouldn't reveal a single detail to anyone else. However, I've always been fond of gossip and am genuinely curious about the story of the brothel madam who changed her face and the family of the lady. At 32 years old, she couldn't possibly be the biological younger sister of the lady, who is only 20. It seems more like she took on the identity of the person whose face she swapped. The lady was not warm towards the sister before her. I am perfectly fine, no need for your concern. Please leave, I wish to rest now. Upon hearing this, the woman's eyes shifted, and she let out a soft laugh. I know you're not happy to see me, sister. Tonight, I'll let the Marquis spend the evening with you so he can care for you. You must take good care of your health. Our wedding is in half a month, and I'll be relying on you to handle the arrangements. The seemingly considerate yet deliberately boastful words made the lady sneer coldly, and she did not continue the conversation with her. In the evening, the Marquis of Yong'an indeed came and sat chatting with his wife. The Marquis of Yong'an said, "When I saw you bending over as if about to vomit today, I thought you might be carrying my child again. I went to the palace to request a physician to prescribe a tonic for you, even if Ninga enters the household. I would only allow you to bear the legitimate heir of the marquisate." He appeared deeply affectionate, and it seemed that the rumors among the people about the Marquis of Yong'an's profound love for his first wife were not entirely unfounded. He does love, but that love is now divided into two parts. His words, however, caused his wife's expression to turn cold. "Have you forgotten that you already killed our child? The Marquis of Yongan froze for a moment, feeling both angry and guilty. Are you still blaming me? If it weren't for your parents' schemes, how would I have ended up entangled with Ninga? It was clearly your father and mother who caused you to lose the baby in anger. They don't love you. I am the only one who truly loves and cares for you. The lady stood up, smashed the teacup on the table, and flew into a rage. Get out. I don't want to see you right now, nor do I want to hear your disgusting words. Lord Yongan, having been publicly shamed, turned cold-faced. His tone icy as he spoke. It seems I've been too good to you in the past, which has made you so ungrateful. Ninga was afraid of the dark, crying and begging me not to leave. I was worried about your health, so I chose to leave her alone and come to see you, yet I can't even get a hint of kindness from you. He stormed off in a huff. The anger on the madam's face faded, and she returned to her usual calm and expressionless demeanor. That night, faint sobbing could be heard from the bedroom. The lady is not as composed as she appears on the surface. After the Marquis of Yongan left in anger, he did not return for 3 consecutive days. The face-changing GU on the lady's face had already loosened most of her skin, with the flesh beneath kept fresh by the gauze threads. The lady had been enduring the excruciating pain of her skin separating from the flesh all along. Today, the pain finally brought tears to her eyes, for the first time. She showed a moment of vulnerability in front of me, calling out to me in a trembling voice, "Miss Bai, the pain on my face is still too unbearable. Please accompany me for a stroll in the garden to distract myself." The artificial rockery in the Marquis's estate is tall, spacious, and uniquely landscaped. I led my wife closer, but then heard a woman's voice from around the corner. "Juana, why are the dark circles under your eyes even darker today?" Another woman's voice said plaintively. "These past few nights, I've been on night duty. The Marquis and Missy shake the bed until midnight every night. I dare not sleep until they call for water, and I have to get up before dawn to tidy the inner chamber. No wonder my eyes are so dark." The person beside her lowered her voice even further. "Missy has truly captivated the Marquis. Ever since she moved into the estate, the Marquis hasn't visited the ladies' chamber. Last time I was on night duty, the Marquis didn't close the window. And I heard him praising Missy over and over, saying her skin is like snow, fragrant and naturally seductive." The maid's voice grew softer and softer until it was inaudible. The lady's hand on my arm tightened. I turned to look at her. Her eyes were filled with tears as she shook her head slightly at me. Understanding her silent plea, I remained quiet and helped her walk in the opposite direction. Only when we returned to the inner courtyard did I release the lady's arm. Turning to see the expression on her face after she had remained silent the entire way, at a glance, I saw tears silently streaming down the lady's face. She bit her lip so hard that it drew blood. To hear with her own ears that the husband she had loved for many years was intimate with another woman, no one could remain unmoved by such a thing. I stood quietly, waiting for the lady to finish crying, then took out a handkerchief and handed it to her. The lady forced a smile while wiping away her tears. When the heart is in enough pain, the pain of the flesh can no longer be felt. I couldn't bear it and reached out to cover her tear-filled eyes, whispering softly, "When you're sad, don't force yourself to smile." I think I somewhat understand why the lady would rather endure the pain of changing her face to escape. Her own parents schemed against her, the husband she loved betrayed her, yet she was forced to stay and endure it all. If she didn't find a way to leave, every day and night from then on would be filled with heart-wrenching agony. Isn't that even more painful than changing her face? In the blink of an eye, the 5th day arrived. It was time to change faces. I asked my wife if she had a particular appearance in mind. In the Hall of 1,000 Faces at the Rouge Pavilion, there were all kinds of human faces collected and preserved by several generations of pavilion masters. My wife shook her head somewhat confusedly. "Don't laugh at me when I say this, but as a child, I acted like a well-behaved child to please my grandmother. As I grew up, I pretended to be filial and respectful to please my parents, and after marriage, I've always been gentle and considerate to keep my husband's love. It seems I've never really thought about what kind of person I want to become. In our line of work, the worst taboo is developing feelings for a client. Perhaps it is because the lady is truly beautiful." And seeing such a lovely person in distress always makes me feel heartbroken for her. She was uncertain, so I made the decision for her. I have a childhood friend who, at 18, begged me to change her face to that of a man. She then went to the battlefield to avenge her father and never returned. Today, I will take her face and give it to you. At the same time, I ask you to go to Huiqing in Jiangnan to check on my friend's mother for me. In return, I will take full responsibility for arranging your departure from the Marquis estate. After the lady nodded in agreement, I left the mansion and returned to the Rouge Pavilion to retrieve the icebox containing the facial makeup. I hurried back to the Marquis' residence with the box and found that the Marquis of Yong'an, whom I hadn't seen for several days, had come again. The maids had all been driven out and were standing guard at the door, exchanging bewildered glances. I heard the sound of porcelain shattering from inside the room, followed by the lady's questioning voice. You forced me to accept you taking a second wife, and I accepted it, but now you want me to personally arrange your wedding. You want me to watch with my own eyes as you bow to heaven and earth with another woman. Chu Huaishou, how can you be so cruel to me? The vow you made before the matchmaker temple, that you would love me wholeheartedly for a lifetime, was it all a lie? You never loved me at all. The Marquis of Yong'an whispered soothingly. How could I have never loved you? You were the first woman I ever loved, the one who awakened my heart. Even with Ninga by my side, you are still the one I love most in my heart, but as the mistress of the household. There are certain responsibilities you cannot avoid without inviting gossip. You don't need to handle all the wedding arrangements, just oversee the betrothal gift list, finalize the invitations to be sent to each family, and make an appearance during the tea ceremony on the wedding day. Disgusting man. While professing love to his wife, he was doing things that hurt her. Perhaps because his departure was imminent, the wife could no longer hold back. I heard a sharp slap, followed by the wife's angry rebuke. Chu Huaishou, you are heartless and shameless. Get out. I will never arrange the wedding for you and Yi Guining. If you are dissatisfied, you might as well write a letter of divorce and drive me out of the house. A long silence ensued, then came the gnashing voice of the Marquis of Yong'an. You jealous woman, since you refuse the dignity I offer you, after I marry Ninga, you will vacate the main courtyard for her to live in. Pack your things. And tomorrow I will send someone to move you to the side courtyard. Of course, I won't divorce you even in death. You must die within my household. The door was forcefully pushed open as the Marquis of Yong'an stormed out in a rage. I quickly stepped aside to avoid him. The icebox in my hand had nowhere to hide, quietly emitting a faint white mist. The Marquis of Yong'an paused mid-step and glared at me with displeasure. What's in the box, now that the weather is turning cold? Are you still sending frozen treats to the lady? As he spoke, he reached out to take it. I stepped back with the box in hand, pretending to be flustered as I explained. This is a new crystal sugar cake from the East Market, to prevent the sugar from melting. It's packed in a box and stored in an ice cellar after it's made. It doesn't actually taste cold. The Marquis of Yong'an took a step closer and snatched the box from my hand without a word. My wife doesn't like sweets, but Lady Ning does. I'll take this back to Fragrant Courtyard. What a man who can ruin everything. Hidden in my sleeve, I twirled a silver needle, planning to stab Yong'an who in the back to knock him out as soon as he turned around. Just then, a teacup flew out from inside the room, hitting Yong'an who squarely on the head. Madam appeared at the door with a stern expression. Is your love just like that box of pastries in your hand? Because Yi Guining likes them, you took them all from me and gave them to her. Is that it? As the two of them stood in confrontation, I couldn't help but feel the atmosphere was strange, and I secretly glanced at the Marquis of Yong'an's expression. He seemed angered by his wife's scolding and hitting him, but there was also a hint of irrepressible delight at the corners of his eyes and brows. Me, is this guy just asking for it? Marquis Yong'an handed the box to his wife, pursed his lips, and said, Xiaoshe, this is the first time I've seen you so angry and jealous. In recent days, you've been so cold to me that I almost thought you no longer cared about me. I know that because of Ninga, I've hurt your feelings. There are still many days ahead, and I will slowly make it up to you. He would soon realize that they would have no future together at all. Without saying a word, the lady glanced at me. I followed her into the room, and she turned around and slammed the door shut with a sharp thud. The Marquis of Yongan stood outside the door for a while, then left. Before the lady lay down, I handed her a cup of tea mixed with painkillers. She shook her head and still refused my kindness. She was still a little afraid. When I reached out to move, she blinked and took the initiative to start a conversation with me. Let me tell you my story, once it's finished. My life as a daughter of the Yi family and the wife of a marquis will come to an end along with the story. I lowered my eyes to observe the lady's expression. She was smiling. You must be curious why, as daughters of the same parents, only I am unloved. Curious why Chu Huaishou, who was engaged to Yi Guining, ended up marrying me. After all, you even eavesdrop on the sparrows quarreling outside the window. So my gossipy nature was that obvious. I laughed and said, since you've seen through me, I won't pretend anymore. I really am very curious about your story. The story of the lady begins when she was 2 years old. At the age of 2, her father went south to serve as an official. Her mother, fearing that her father might take another woman while away, followed him and left her in the care of her grandmother. Her grandmother, displeased that she was a girl, treated her with great indifference. On ordinary days, only the maids and nannies kept her company. As she grew older and became more aware, she noticed that other children were doted on and protected by their parents. So she secretly asked her nanny where her own parents were. The nanny always comforted her, saying that her parents would come to reunite with her during the new year. She waited year after year until she was 8 years old, when her father was transferred back to the capital and brought home a 5-year-old sister. She felt distant and unfamiliar with her parents, and they, in turn, had little affection for their daughter who had been separated from them since childhood. Doting only on the sister who had been raised by their side, on the first Lantern Festival after her sister arrived in the capital, her parents left her at home, using the excuse that her sister had never seen the capital's Lantern Festival, and took only her sister out to enjoy the festivities. Who would have thought that the Lantern Festival would be so crowded, and my 5-year-old sister got lost? My parents searched with all their might for half a year. But there was still no news of my sister, so they consulted a fortune teller, who said that if they changed the eldest sister's name to something related to the younger sister, the bond of kinship would naturally bring her back. And so, after losing her sister, she also lost her own name. From Yi Shu, she became Yi Xuanshu. Yi Shu was originally her sister's name. Every happy moment of her childhood, her parents would murmur about the lost younger sister. You're enjoying comfort at home, while my poor daughter is suffering somewhere out there. Your sister hasn't been found yet. How can you be so happy and live your life with such peace of mind? All the clothes and jewelry you wear should have been your sister's. She's been fair and lovely since she was little. These would have looked even more beautiful on her. Such heavy accusations filled her small heart with guilt, fostering a habit of humbly trying to please her parents. Her father was in poor health, and her mother had suffered from headaches and back pain since childbirth. In an effort to help her parents recover, she even knelt for 3 days at the doorstep of a renowned physician, begging for the chance to study medicine. After mastering the craft, she personally performed acupuncture and massages for her parents every month and prepared medicinal baths for them. It was only through her persistent efforts to please them that her parents gradually grew closer to her. However, this closeness was completely withdrawn the moment Yi Guining was found. They saw her as a rival to their beloved daughter and did not hesitate to scheme against her, causing her to lose her own child. During the 2 years her parents were in Jiangnan, it happened to be the time when the Marquis of Yongan was taken by his parents to mourn his grandmother's passing far away. That was when the two families became connected. The Marquis of Yongan became her father's student, learning literature from him, coinciding with her mother giving birth to her younger sister. The two families arranged a childhood marriage for the 2 children. After her younger sister went missing, the Marquis of Yongan still frequently visited Master Yi, his teacher. And over time, he became familiar with her as well. The Marquis of Yongan was only 2 months older than her. When they were at the age of budding romance, she secretly developed feelings for this young man who would bring her candies and folk trinkets. However, she knew he was her younger sister's betrothed, so she never revealed her feelings and even deliberately kept her distance, acting cold and aloof towards him. Later, Lord Yi took the initiative to propose not delaying the Yong'an Marquis's marriage and wanted to dissolve the childhood engagement that had been arranged. However, the Yong'an Marquis rejected his proposal, vowing earnestly in front of both families that he was deeply in love with her and wished to fulfill the marriage agreement with the Yi family. Thus, at the age of 16, she married the man she loved but never dared to hope for, who also promised to have only her for the rest of his life. She was so overjoyed that it felt like a dream. However, this dream lasted only 4 short years. 4 years later, her long-lost sister was found. The husband who had promised to be with her for life changed his attitude after spending one night with her sister. Ignoring the fact that she had just suffered a miscarriage and was still in confinement, he bluntly declared that he would take responsibility for her sister and marry her into the household as a co-wife. She spent almost every day of her confinement in tears, while the husband who had once been deeply affectionate towards her accused her of feigning weakness to prevent her sister from entering the household. Everyone said she had taken her sister's place, and now, not forcing her to step down was already considered the Marquis of Yong'an showing mercy for old times' sake. Everyone was pushing her to yield and compromise, expecting her to smile as the man she deeply loved married another woman. In despair, she found herself walking into the Jianzhuang pavilion. The needle I inserted into the lady's skin was coated with a sedative, and as she spoke, she unknowingly fell into a deep sleep. I took out a bell and gently shook it. The GU worms hidden beneath the lady's skin retracted the threads that held the flesh in place. Slowly, I lifted the face I had shared 5 days with and, without a change in expression, replaced it with the long-sealed face of an old acquaintance from the icebox. The GU worms diligently adjusted the fit between the new skin and the flesh and bones inside. It wasn't until the moon was high in the sky that a shadowy figure silently infiltrated the mansion and dropped the female corpse they were carrying in front of me. I pointed at my peacefully sleeping wife on the bed and said to the visitor, "Take her and the bundle beside her, hide them in my room at the Rouge Pavilion, and let her rest for 2 days. Once the little GU emerges, you personally escort her to Aunt Zhao's house in Huiqing." The visitor nodded silently, swept up my wife like the wind, and left. I retrieved the fire oil hidden under my wife's bed, doused the entire room with it, and then tossed a fire starter. As the flames engulfed the room, I used the momentum to leap onto a distant tree and concealed myself. The maids had long been sent back to the servants' quarters. By the time the Marquis's household discovered the fire, half of the ladies' room had already burned down. I saw the Marquis of Yong'an, dressed only in his undergarments, rushing over in a panic, nearly out of control as he shouted the lady's name. I saw the suicide note the lady had left in the courtyard earlier flutter in the wind and land at the Marquis of Yong'an's feet. With trembling hands, he picked it up. "Today we part with our lives. The grace of birth and upbringing is severed. The heart of love and affection is utterly extinguished. From now on, whether I ascend to the highest heavens or descend to the yellow springs, I only wish to be separated from you and never meet again." I saw the fake second Miss Yi rush to embrace the Marquis of Yong'an, who was trying to charge into the fire to save someone, but the Marquis forcefully pushed her to the ground. After the Marquis's household finished putting out the fire, they carried out a charred, blackened body. The Marquis of Yong'an let out a mournful cry, nearly hysterical as he knelt on the ground, weeping uncontrollably. "Xiaoshe, I was wrong. I won't take a second wife anymore. Please come back." "All right, I only want you. From now on, I will only want you. People never know how to cherish until they lose something." I sneered. No longer interested in watching this farce, covering my face, I blended into the night and left. I never expected to see the Marquis of Yong'an again after half a year. I had merely bought a small bouquet from a little beggar on the street, but by the time I caught a strange fragrance, it was already too late. The knockout drug entered my lungs, and I immediately blacked out, collapsing to the ground. When I woke up, I found myself in a dimly lit prison cell, with the Marquis of Yong'an sitting just beyond a door. I shook the iron chains that bound my hands and feet to the wall, feeling somewhat surprised. "Where is this? Why have you captured me?" I am truly surprised that the Marquis of Yong'an was able to trace it back to me. It seems he is not the lustful fool I thought he was. The Marquis of Yongan cast a shadowy gaze upon me, his killing intent unmistakable. By Fei Yan, the owner of Jianzhuang Tower, return my wife to me, and I might spare your life today. I remained unruffled and sneered. Isn't the Marquis's wife right in your mansion? I attended your wedding ceremony that day, just 1 month ago, and your young wife already looked about 4 months pregnant at the time. The image of the Marquis of Yongan's heart-wrenching grief and regret on the day his wife faked her death is still vivid in my mind. I thought he would at least mourn for his wife for a year or two, but who would have thought that in just 2 months, he and that fake second young lady already had a child together. Such a restless and filthy man still has the nerve to pester the lady, the Marquis of Yongan retorted to me. I already know that Xiaosha doesn't want me to take a second wife, so Ninga will only have the status of a noble concubine when she enters the household. As long as she is willing to return, I can overlook the fact that she conspired with you to deceive me. She will still be my only wife. Chu Huaishou. I looked at him with a hint of disgust. You. A filthy man who can't keep himself clean. What kind of blessing or honor is it to be your wife? Yongan Marquis gritted his teeth and said, By Fei Yan, I'm not here to argue with you. If you don't reveal Xiaosha's whereabouts today, I'll make you experience the unique 100 punishments of the Dali Temple's prison. After saying this, Yongan Marquis picked up a small crossbow, pressed it lightly, and 2 arrows shot into my shoulders like meteors. The pain of flesh being pierced through followed immediately. The arrow must have been poisoned, as I felt countless tiny insects gnawing at the wound. This is just a small lesson for you. If you still refuse to talk, the next arrows that land on you won't be just 2. I stared at the gloomy face of the Marquis of Yongan, my heart boiling with murderous intent. From the time they discover I'm in danger in the building to finding where I'm locked up, it's expected to take 2 days. I need to find a way to stall this madman for 2 days first. I pretended to be in pain, gasped sharply, and said to Lord Yongan, Since your lordship has found me, you must have investigated the Rouge Pavilion. The pavilion has a rule: we only take orders from clients and do not inquire about their affairs. As for your wife's whereabouts, I only know she went southwest. She once mentioned wanting to see the steep mountains there. This was something the lady mentioned to me unintentionally. When the Marquis of Yongan was young and traveling for his studies, he spent 2 years in Shu. He had made a promise with his wife to travel to Shu together if the opportunity arose. After hearing my words, the Marquis of Yongan clearly recalled this promise he had failed to fulfill. He remained silent for a moment, then summoned his subordinate and sent someone to investigate in Shu. He threatened me coldly. I presume you are aware that I have no tolerance for you. If I cannot find my wife's whereabouts in Shu, I will personally slice your flesh off piece by piece. The Marquis of Yongan turned and left, and the candlelight in the dark prison went out with him. I was confined in the endless darkness for 2 days, during which I had neither water nor food, leaving me so weak and dizzy from hunger. Hearing the sound of the door unlocking, I dazedly thought it was someone from the building coming to rescue me. It wasn't until I heard the chaotic and unsteady footsteps that I realized the person who had come was not here to save me. A fragrant breeze swept past my nose, and with a click, a fire starter lit up right in front of me. I saw the beautiful and captivating face of the fake second Miss Yi. There is no disguise on my face, and the second Miss Yi recognized me. When her probing gaze fell on my face, there was fear and panic in her eyes. I heard Huaishou captured the owner of Jianzhuang Tower. And it turns out it's you. Did you say anything about me in front of him? This woman must be here today to silence me. I tried to explain. Miss Yi, our Jianzhuang Lu has a rule. We never disclose our guests' information to outsiders. I haven't said anything about you in front of Lord Yongan. The woman in front of me clearly wasn't listening to my words anymore. A hint of malice flashed in her eyes as she looked at me and said sinisterly, Only the dead can keep secrets forever. I'm sorry. Host, I've worked so hard to become a noble lady, to become the only woman of the Marquis. I can't let anything jeopardize the life of luxury I have now. A cold gleam flashed in her hand as a sharp dagger plunged into my chest with a sickening thud. Suddenly, a swift gust of wind swept by. I urgently called out to stop them. Don't harm her life just yet. The person's blade turned, and the hilt struck the back of Miss Yi's head, knocking her unconscious to the ground. I breathed a sigh of relief. No longer holding back the pain, and cried out in agony, "Ah Yuan, quickly, help me break the chains and give me some painkillers for the wound." Ah Yuan silently treated my wound, then stuffed a detoxifying and energy-restoring pill into my mouth. Only when he saw the color returning to my face did he ask, "Why, is this blaming me for why I ditched the undercover protection and went out alone?" I pouted, "I just wanted to have a couple of days of carefree fun." Who knew the Marquis of Yongan actually had the ability to track me down? One of them is ruthless, the other is vicious. They really are a perfect match. I tied up the fake second Miss Yi and threw her in the corner, then loosely fastened the chains on her hands and feet, waiting for the Marquis of Yongan to arrive. They created a strange encounter for me, and I must return the favor. In the evening, Marquis Yongan, dressed in black, hurried over. This time, he didn't interrogate me through the cell door but came straight in and grabbed me by the neck. "You wretch, how dare you deceive me? It seems you're really asking for death." It seems that not finding any trace of his wife has driven him mad with rage. His eyes were even bloodshot. He drew the saber from his waist and was about to slice the flesh from my shoulder. I grinned, breaking the iron chains on my body, and shot a silver needle straight into the Marquis of Yongan's chest. He had not expected me to resist, and in an instant, he was struck by my drug and collapsed weakly to the ground. I shouted toward the roof, "A Yuan, drag that woman over." I'm truly curious if the Marquis of Yongan, who dotes on this beauty so much, were to learn her true identity, how would he feel? A Yuan silently went to the corner, carried Yi Guining over, and threw him at the feet of the Marquis of Yongan. The Marquis of Yongan, weakened by the drug, could only struggle feebly and glare at me fiercely with his eyes. "Don't touch her, I'm the one who captured you, I'm the one who wants to kill you. If you have any grievances, direct them at me." I shook my head, pointing at the bloodstain on my chest and said, "This is a stab from your precious concubine. If my people hadn't arrived in time to make her strike shallow, I would have been silenced by her murderous act." The Marquis of Yongan did not believe it. "Ninga has always been delicate and timid. If you hadn't kidnapped her, she wouldn't even dare to enter the door of this secret chamber." The fake second Miss Yi was so frightened that she could only weep and beg, "Lord, save me. I'm still carrying our child." I watched the beauty weeping as if drenched by rain, and seeing the pained expression on Lord Yongan's face, I couldn't help but clap and praise. What excellent acting. Is this how you deceived Lord Yongan into betraying his wife, abandoning his vows, and indulging in revelry with you night after night? Truly worthy of the famed courtesan Peony from Willow Bank. Your skill in manipulating men is remarkable. Peony's cries grew shriller. "Shut up, my lord. This woman is trying to make up lies to harm me. Don't believe a single word she says." The Marquis of Yongan stared at me with a dark expression. "What do you mean by what you said?" I stepped on Hua Muden's neck, forcing her to bow her head in the direction of the Marquis of Yongan. I held the lamp and leaned down, finding a faint red dot below Hua Muden's ear, then pointed it out to the Marquis of Yongan. "Your lordship must have investigated at our Jianzhuang pavilion. The only trace left after a face change is this mark below the ear, where the GU worm enters and exits. Look. The person before you is not the real second Miss Yi at all, she's merely wearing second Miss Yi's face." The Marquis of Yongan's pupils slightly contracted as he stared at Hua Muden and asked, "Is what she said true? Who are you, really?" Hua Muden's face could not hide her panic, but she still stubbornly insisted, "My lord, I am Yi Guining, I am your wife, the mother of your child. Please do not listen to the slander of outsiders." I clicked my tongue disapprovingly and said to Hua Muden, "What matters most in a marriage is honesty between both parties. Since you refuse to tell the truth, I will speak on your behalf." I turned to the Marquis of Yongan and said slowly, "She was once the most renowned courtesan of the Flower Moon Pavilion in Jiangnan. As she grew older, she became the madam of the establishment. Don't be fooled by her youthful face that looks no older than 17, she's actually 32 on the inside. Seems she's even a cycle older than you." The expression on the Marquis of Yongan's face shifted several times, likely unwilling to believe that he had slept with an aging courtesan. He flatly denied it, saying, "Impossible, Ninga is naive and innocent by nature, not at all like a woman in her 30s. I sneered and asked the Marquis of Yongan, "As a man, can you really not tell the difference? If she were truly a simple 17-year-old girl, how could she have captivated you so completely? Making you shake the bed in the middle of the night, you don't actually believe she was born with such seductive charm, do you? That's a skill she honed under countless men at the House of Flowers and Moon. I heard the Marquis of Yongan has a cleanliness obsession." After hearing my words, the Marquis of Yongan imagined that the woman beside him had been enjoyed by countless lowly men, and indeed he showed a look of disgust, glaring at Peony with eyes wide in fury. Peony was still shaking her head in denial. "What she said is false, my lord. Don't believe her. Look at me, I am the genuine daughter of the Yi family. Look at my face. Didn't you say that I am as innocent and pure as the memory from your childhood?" The Marquis of Yongan avoided her gaze with a dark expression. What needed to be said had been said. I struck, using our Yuan's sword hilt to forcefully break two of Yonganhu's fingers. "This is payback for the 2 arrows you shot at me. As for Hua Muden, I broke the agreement by revealing your identity-swapping secret, which cancels out the debt you owe me for that knife. Oh, and by the way, the body of the real second Miss Yi is still stored in our Jianzhuang Lu in Jiangnan. If Yongan-hu or the 2 old folks from the Yi family want to claim it, they'd better prepare 100 taels of gold first." Returning to Jianzhuang Lu, our Yuan furrowed her brows, looking displeased. "They hurt you, why not just kill them?" I smiled and patted our Yuan's head. "Sometimes, living is more painful than dying. Moreover, Hua Muden might not survive the wrath of the Marquis of Yongan." With the clues I provided, the Marquis of Yongan quickly uncovered Hua Muden's identity. The Yi family parents also knew that for the sake of a fake daughter, they had driven their own biological daughter to the point where she would rather perish in a fire than ever see them again. I received the Yi family parents in the building, who had come with 100 taels of gold. Both of them looked haggard and absent-minded, and Mrs. Yi, in particular, had cried until her eyes were swollen and red. "Master Bai, was my daughter really killed by that vicious woman from the Marquis's household? Can you take me to see her?" I unceremoniously took half of the 100 taels of gold. "Of course, this is the deposit. If you confirm that the body is indeed your missing second daughter, I will take the remaining half." When we set off for Jiangnan with the elderly couple, the Marquis of Yongan also came, riding his horse behind our carriage. I heard that he had been dismissed from his post by the Emperor these past few days because, as the commander of the Imperial Guards, he had privately mobilized the guards in order to capture me and find out the whereabouts of his wife. On the way, Marquis Yongan rode up to my carriage and asked in a low voice, "What is your relationship with the Emperor?" I gave a scornful laugh and replied, "What does it have to do with you? In any case, I am not someone you can afford to provoke. Now that you've lost your official position and only have an empty title left, you are even less capable of crossing me. I certainly won't tell him that the current emperor is my biological father. If it weren't for having strong backing, how could Rouge Pavilion run so smoothly under my management? My mother was originally as gentle and submissive as the lady. She fell in love with my father at a young age, pledged themselves to each other, and had me. Later, when the despicable emperor ascended the throne and filled the imperial harem with new consorts, my mother couldn't bear sharing her husband with others. Heartbroken, she resolutely decided to leave and never looked back until her death. I think the reason I can't help but feel soft-hearted toward the lady is partly because she reminds me of my mother. When in love, I fear no sacrifice. When withdrawing, I can be resolute without looking back. After 2 months of travel, I arrived at the Jiangnan makeup house and personally led the Marquis of Yongan and Yi's parents to identify the body. The house assigned a maid to attend to me. When we went to the ice chamber to open the coffin, the maid stepped ahead of me and reached out to push open the coffin door. Because she had no face, I covered second Miss Yi's face with a layer of white gauze. Old Lady Yi stepped forward, threw herself beside the corpse, and with trembling hands, lifted the clothing covering the body, a small mole on the shoulder, a burn scar on the leg, and on the ankle. The mark left from when she was bitten by a neighbor's dog as a child. This is the daughter I've been searching for 12 years, that wretched woman from the Marquis's household. Don't think just because she committed suicide out of guilt that I won't settle the score for her killing my daughter. I'll grind her bones to dust and scatter her ashes." Master Yi's legs gave way, and he collapsed to the ground, his face filled with a hollow, desolate sorrow. "My daughter, your father has come too late, don't be afraid. Your mother and I will take you home now, let's go home." The Marquis of Yongan had been watching in silence until the Yi family parents wiped their tears and tried to take the body of the second Miss Yi away. He then stepped forward to block my path. "Is my wife in Jiangnan? I know I have offended the White Tower Master before, and I am willing to sever one of my own arms to apologize. I only ask that you tell me my wife's whereabouts." Upon hearing the Marquis of Yongan mention his wife, the Yi family parents both turned to look at him. Old Lady Yi's eyes lit up with hope, looking at me with eager anticipation as she asked, "Master Bai, is my Xuanshu here with you? In the past, we as parents wronged her. During this time she's been away, both her father and I have been having health problems, and only now have we come to realize all she's been doing to take care of our health. She's such a filial child, it's us who failed as parents." Old Master Yi also looked over with red-rimmed eyes. After losing a false daughter and learning about the death of their real second daughter, they finally remembered Madam's goodness. I looked at the Yi family parents and asked, "Even if she were still here, what then? You ruined her marriage and caused the death of her child. Do you really expect her to come back without any resentment and continue being the filial daughter at your feet?" The two of them were left speechless, tears streaming down their aged faces. After a long while, Old Master Yi let out a sigh. "Forget it, we have no face to see her again, it's enough to know she's living well somewhere in this world." Old Lady Yi removed the jade bracelet from her wrist, the hair ornaments from her head, and the jade pendant she wore close to her body, one by one, and stuffed them into my hands, pleading, "If the Tower Master ever meets my Xuanshu, please help pass these things on to her. In the past, I, as her mother, did not treat her well. From now on, I only wish for her to live a more relaxed and happy life." I glanced sideways at the maid accompanying me. Her expression was blank, her eyes calm as if she were looking at a stranger, so I clasped my hands behind my back and took a step back. "Jianzhuang Tower does not offer delivery services. Please take your items back." "Madam," Yi's parents looked dejected, their bodies hunched as they shuffled away with unsteady steps. The Marquis of Yongan remained standing in place, unmoving. He looked at me with certainty and said, "You must know Xiaosha's whereabouts. I beg you, please tell me. I know I broke her heart, at least give me a chance to apologize to her face." As he said this, Marquis Yongan raised his hand and struck his own arm. A cracking sound echoed as the bones snapped. "I apologize for my previous offense. If that is still not enough, after I meet Xiaosha one last time, if Tower Master Bai wants my life, I can give it to him." Looking at the obsession and plea on Yong'anhu's face, I couldn't help but find him ridiculous. "What are you pretending for? When she was by your side, you abandoned her to fool around with others. Not long after her death, you still had the heart to have a child with someone else. Now you say you're willing to trade your life for a piece of information. I find that hypocritical and disgusting. If you're so eager to find her, then why don't you give up your life as a pampered marquis in the capital? Just put on plain clothes, blend into the crowd, and search every corner of this world. If you truly love her so much, you should be able to recognize her at a glance if she were right in front of you, right?" Yong'anhu closed his eyes, two streams of tears of regret flowing down his face, and finally turned and left, until only our own people were left in the building. The maid beside me turned to look at me. "Long time no see, Miss Bai." Seeing the smile on the face of this old friend that I hadn't seen in many years, I couldn't help but feel a little dazed. "Long time no see. I can no longer call you madam now. Which one is your current name, Xuanshu or Xiaosha?" Her parents from the Yi family call her Xuanshu. The Marquis of Yong'an calls her Xiaosha. I wonder which one she prefers herself. The lady gently shook her head. "Neither is my name, now that I practice medicine outside with my mother. I have given myself the name Zhao Chang'an. My patients all call me An Yang." Hearing that she had chosen a name for herself, I asked her, "Did Aunt Zhao recognize that you are not her daughter?" The lady nodded and said, even with the same face, the moment my mother saw me, she recognized that I was not the former Miss Zhao. I told her my story, and she took pity on me, accepting me as her goddaughter. Today, I specifically arranged for her to meet Yi's parents and the Marquis of Yong'an. And now she speaks calmly and looks composed, as if the regrets and tears of those people have left no trace in her heart. I told Zhao Chang'an about Hua Mudan, feeling a bit embarrassed as I said, if you want to blame me, it's understandable. If I hadn't given her that new face, she wouldn't have been recognized by the Yi family, and she wouldn't have had the chance to take away your parents and husband. Zhao Chang'an shook his head slightly. My parents never loved me. And having a sister wouldn't have changed that. As for Chu Huaishou, he broke his vow to me so easily even without Yi Guining. There would have been someone else eventually. In any case, the old Yi Xuanshu is dead. She would never forgive the pain they caused her. Let the past remain in the past. The Zhao Chang'an who lives now regards them as nothing more than strangers. I laughed. It seems Zhao Chang'an has truly let go of the past. Then, An Yang. May you have eternal peace and happiness in the future. After hearing the first story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, there is another similar story. Let's continue to see. My father's rebellion succeeded. He started showing off the very first day he sat on the dragon throne. Not knowing what to do as the new emperor, he waved his hand grandly and declared, the deposed emperor still has charm. And the former crown prince is quite handsome. Both shall be given to my daughter as male consorts. The father and son from the previous dynasty were so enraged that they vomited blood on the spot. I was instantly petrified. Father, why bestow her upon me? Just take her out and behead her. Unexpectedly, the still charming deposed emperor raised an eyebrow and gave my father a doting smile. He stood up slowly, ignoring everyone, and walked straight up to my father. Ace. You're being mischievous again. Then, to the astonishment of all the civil and military officials in the court, he dragged my tall and imposing emperor father into the bedchamber as if he were carrying a chick. Only the former crown prince and I were left, staring at each other in bewilderment. He sneered coldly. Zhao Wanning, I would rather die than be a concubine. I rolled my eyes. You wish, at best, you're just a freebie and you still want a title. My father, Zhao Ce. A tough and straightforward general who had guarded the frontier for 16 years, successfully staged a rebellion. On the first day of his reign, he was clearly very unaccustomed to it. Dressed in a brand new dragon robe, sitting on the dragon throne, his brows were furrowed so tightly they could crush a fly. The dragon robe was too slippery, and he kept wanting to pull down the sleeves. The dragon crown was too heavy, pressing down on his neck until it felt like it might break. Long live the emperor, 10,000 years, 10,000 times 10,000 years. The roar was like a tidal wave. He held back for a long time, as if finally remembering that he was now the emperor and had to do something befitting an emperor. So, he cleared his throat. All the civil and military officials in the court perked up, knelt down in unison, and prepared to listen to the first imperial edict of the founding of the nation. I also craned my neck, curious to see what grand principles of governing and securing the nation my father could come up with. In the end, my father waved his hand grandly and shouted with full vigor, "Pass the decree. The deposed Emperor Xiao Yang still retains his charm, and the former crown prince is quite handsome. Have them both cleaned up and bestowed upon my daughter as male consorts." In the Golden Yuan Hall, the air instantly froze. I was petrified on the spot. Is my father's brain squashed by a door? The former crown prince Xiao Jingxi, his handsome face flushed with anger, spat out a mouthful of blood. I was even more agitated than him. Father, why reward me? Those two are remnants of the previous dynasty. Keeping them alive is nothing but trouble. Just drag them out and behead them. That'll settle it once and for all. My father was stunned by my shout, then stiffened his neck with an expression that said, "I'm the emperor now, what I say goes." Nonsense, you're already 16 and still unsettled. I'm doing this for your own good. That deposed emperor and the crown prince are truly handsome. I've screened them for you. I was so angry I almost couldn't catch my breath. This isn't about screening candidates, this is about risking our necks. Just as I was about to continue arguing with my father, to make him understand how to write the words uproot the weeds and eliminate the roots. A clear and somewhat lazily amused voice came from below the steps. Your Majesty truly has such great authority. My entire body stiffened, and I turned my head sharply. I saw the deposed Emperor Xiao Yang, whom my father had described as still charming, slowly walking up from the base of the steps. There was not a trace of the disheveled look of a prisoner on his face. Instead, it carried a doting and helpless smile. My father clearly hadn't expected him to step forward on his own. And a barely noticeable flicker of panic crossed his dark face. What do you want to do? My father blustered with a false show of strength. Guards, seize him for me. However, not a single guard dared to move. Xiao Yang had already reached the steps of the throne. He looked up at the bulky figure on the dragon throne, who was feigning composure, and the smile on his lips deepened. Ace, you're being mischievous again. Boom, my worldview shattered. Ace, my father, Zhao Ce. The one who could stop a child's crying at night and was called the living king of hell on the battlefield, is now being called sweetie. I looked at my father in disbelief. I saw my tall and burly father's face flush bright red in an instant, his eyes darting around, unable to utter a single word for a long time. The mental picture is too beautiful, I can't bear to look. The next second, something even more unbelievable happened. Xiao Yang ignored the entire court of civil and military officials. He reached out and pinched my father's chin, forcing him to meet his gaze. Have you had enough fun? My father's eyes grew even more evasive, his Adam's apple bobbing up and down, revealing a somewhat pitiful and aggrieved expression. Xiao Yang's tone rose slightly at the end, carrying a hint of dangerous warning. My father instantly shut his mouth. Then, under the horrified gazes of me and all the ministers, Xiao Yang made a move that would be enough to go down in history. He effortlessly picked up my father horizontally from the dragon throne and carried him toward the side chamber. The entire golden throne hall was so silent you could hear a pin drop. Then, Xiao Yang's deep voice sounded. His Majesty is tired. Today's morning court session is adjourned. Ministers, you may take your leave. The ministers, bang. The door of the bedchamber was slammed shut. Just before the door closed, I seemed to hear my father's faint protest. Xiao Yang. You bastard. What about my dignity? After a long while, a sound came from beside me. I turned my head and looked at the other candidate for male favorite, the former crown prince, Xiao Jingxi. His handsome face flushed a deep purplish red, his fists clenched tightly. Zhao Warning. I would rather die than become your male concubine. Looking at his unyielding demeanor and recalling the shocking scene from earlier, I suddenly felt utterly exhausted. I rolled my eyes exaggeratedly and retorted impatiently. You wish, in my father's edict, your father is the main course, you're just a side dish at best, and you still want recognition. You, Xiao Jingxi trembled with rage. I couldn't be bothered to deal with him anymore. All I wanted was to find a quiet place to be alone. The next day at the morning court session, my father has finally appeared. His face was sallow, with two large dark circles under his eyes, and his walking posture was indescribable. One hand was always vaguely supporting his lower back. He was dazed the entire time, responding to whatever the ministers said with vague ahs and ahs, his gaze unfocused. In contrast, the deposed Emperor Xiao Yang, dressed in a white robe, stood at the head of the civil officials, looking refreshed and radiant. With a faint smile playing at the corners of his mouth, he even thoughtfully reminded my father when he was lost in thought. Your Majesty, Minister Wang is referring to this year's tax revenue issue in the Ministry of Revenue. My father jolted awake, straightened his back with a hand on his waist, and mumbled, Oh, taxes, your words are most reasonable, approved. Lord Wang was immediately dumbfounded. Your Majesty, I haven't even presented the specific plan yet, my father. Xiao Yang cleared his throat lightly, stepped forward, and took out a memorial from his sleeve. Your Majesty was attending to state affairs last night and has caught a slight chill. This is the draft I have prepared for your Majesty. Do any of you have objections? His gaze swept calmly across the room, seemingly gentle and harmless, yet it sent a chill down everyone's spine. The entire court fell into a dead silence. My father glanced at him with overwhelming gratitude. then quickly turned his head away. My eyelids were twitching. After court, I cornered my father. "Father, are you all right? How's your back?" Last night, my father's face instantly turned beet red, and he defended himself, saying, "What nonsense. I was handling state affairs last night and sat for too long." As he spoke, he walked away quickly with a strange, splay-footed gait. I watched his fleeing figure and then glanced not far away, where Xiao Yang was smiling in this direction. His gaze exactly like that of a well-fed fox. What exactly happened between them last night? It couldn't really be what I'm thinking, could it? My father's days as emperor can be described as a history of blood and tears. During the day in the Golden Yuan Hall, he was driven to the brink of frustration by a group of civil officials who skillfully quoted classics and spoke in circles, making his liver ache with anger. He was accustomed to the straightforwardness of military life and couldn't stand the sarcastic remarks of these scholars. "Your Majesty, I believe this action goes against the ancestral laws." "Your Majesty," the sage said, every time this happened, my father would feel a splitting headache and could only look helplessly at Xiao Yang standing below, and Xiao Yang could always shut those civil officials up with just a few words, quoting classics and citing sources. Then lay out the solution clearly before my father, waiting only for his nod. My father, stripped of all authority, looked like a mere tool for nodding and stamping. When he returned to his bedchamber at night, his days grew even worse. According to the palace attendants, His Majesty is tutored every night by the deposed Emperor Xiao Yang, studying memorials until late at night. Several times when I passed by the bedchamber late at night, I could hear my father's suppressed roars. "Xiao Yang, you've gone too far, outrageous. I am the emperor. You get out of my sight." Then came a series of clattering sounds of objects shattering, before everything finally fell silent. The next day, the dark circles under my father's eyes grew even darker. The palace servants all spread rumors that the new emperor was diligent in governance and loved the people, while the deposed emperor was virtuous and kind, truly a blessing for the nation and its people. I rolled my eyes as I listened. Though I don't know exactly what they're doing, I'm certain it's definitely not discussing political matters. Out of deep concern for my father's health, late that night, I changed into a set of dark clothes and quietly sneaked to the outside of the bedchamber, poked a hole in the window paper, and wanted to see what kind of homework they were actually tutoring. As a result, what I heard wasn't any matter of national importance, but, "RCE, come on. Open your mouth and drink this bowl of lotus seed porridge." It was the voice of the deposed emperor. "Xiao Yang, I won't drink it, it's way too sweet." My father's voice sounded both stubborn and aggrieved. "Be good, you need to drink it to regain your strength. Later, we'll continue. My back hurts, can I rest tonight?" My father's voice grew softer, with a hint of barely noticeable coquettishness. "No." Xiao Yang's reply was resolute, yet carried a hint of laughter. "Who was it that said I couldn't do it last night?" I couldn't bear to listen to the rest of the conversation. I covered my face, feeling as if the sky had fallen. My father, who stands 8 feet tall, majestic and powerful, capable of charging through enemy lines 7 times on the battlefield, was actually the bottom. I was completely shattered. In the following days, my father visibly withered away, with sunken eyes and trembling legs as he walked. In contrast, Xiao Yang was radiant and full of energy, walking with a confident stride. Even the old maids in the palace remarked that they hadn't seen him so spirited in a long time. I seriously suspect that my father's rebellion might have been a miscalculation. He's not acting as an emperor at all. He's clearly a piece of meat delivered right to our doorstep. The more I think about it, the more I feel that my father's rebellion was just too smooth. Although my father was a fierce general on the frontier with illustrious military achievements, one day, he suddenly raised his arms and rallied the troops, marching all the way to the capital. At all the important passes, the defending generals either quietly resisted and were defeated, or directly opened the city gates and surrendered. Although he possessed extraordinary combat prowess, this was just too smooth. There were no casualties on either side. Something felt strange everywhere. To uncover the truth, I decided to start with those closest to my father, the uncles who had fought alongside him to build the empire. The first person I went to see was General Lee, my father's deputy, who had watched me grow up. I brought a pot of good wine and went straight to his residence. After 3 cups of wine, I got straight to the point. Uncle Lee, don't you think my father's rebellion this time went a little too smoothly? General Lee's hand, which was picking up food, paused. And the smile on his face froze. He spoke evasively, warning, "What kind of talk is this? Your father is destined by heaven, and the soldiers are united in their efforts. Naturally, we advanced with unstoppable momentum. Is that so?" I stared into his eyes. I remember when we attacked Yuju back then. The defending general was the so-called Iron Wall General Chen. How did the city fall in just 3 days? And what about the natural barrier outside the capital? General Wang, the defending commander, was a die-hard loyalist of the Xiao family. Why didn't he even put up a fight and simply opened the city gates to surrender? General Lee's forehead began to sweat, his eyes darting around. Well, as the art of war says, the best strategy is to attack the enemy's mind. It's your father. His turtle aura was so overwhelming that the enemy fled in terror at the mere sight of him. I nearly spat out my drink. Turtle aura, Uncle Lee, is someone threatening you? Tell me. Seeing that I couldn't get anything out of him, I went to find General Zhong and General Wang, but all I got in return were nonsense like destined by fate and supported by the people. The most infuriating thing was that every one of them ended up looking at me with a "my dear daughter, you just don't understand your father's love" expression, and then politely kicked me out. These old foxes are too tight-lipped. It seems I can only rely on myself. Using my new identity as the eldest princess, I obtained a token granting access to all restricted areas of the Imperial Palace. My first stop was the Wenyuan Pavilion, where military archives were stored. I spread out the massive campaign route map, marking all the key passes and cities with a vermilion brush, from the first outpost at the frontier to the very foot of the capital, just as I had expected. The commanders defending these cities were all renowned generals on the battlefield, and it was absolutely impossible for them to collapse at the first encounter. The more I looked, the heavier my heart grew. Behind all this, there was undoubtedly an invisible hand orchestrating everything. Who is it? Could there be a mole in the court? But my father, a military general who has been stationed at the border for years, how could he have such extensive connections in the capital? I racked my brain but couldn't figure it out, so I rummaged through my father's study, hoping to find some clues. My father wasn't fond of reading. Aside from a few books on military strategy, most of the items on his bookshelf were merely for decoration. Just as I was about to give up, my fingertips brushed against a sandalwood box on the top shelf of the bookcase. Inside, there were no military strategy manuals or treasure maps, but a thick stack of letters. All of them were written by Xiao Yang to my father. RCE, the wind and sand beyond the frontier are harsh. Have you received the fox fur robe I prepared for you? Do not forget to add more layers and be careful not to catch a cold. The signature was a vermilion character Yang, with the Emperor's personal seal stamped beside it. I continued scrolling down. RCE, today in the court, those old fools were clamoring again, utterly tedious. I miss you dearly. When will you be able to return to the capital? RCE, I have painted a portrait of you. Take a look. Does it capture 70% of your likeness? RCE, today I acquired a new Fergana horse, capable of galloping 1,000 miles in a day. When you return, we shall ride it together and gallop across the land. How does that sound? Page after page, letter after letter. They were all love letters written by Xiao Yang to my father. Between the lines, there was no decorum between a ruler and his subject, only the raw longing and affection of one man for another. My mind went blank with a buzzing sound. So, they had been involved all along. My father's reply was mixed in among them, with only a few words, written in a bold and unrestrained script, full of a military man's ruggedness. Received it, very warm. Though the capital is bustling, it cannot compare to a single moon at the border. Do not worry, not alike. Too effeminate, you're on. This is blatantly the cheesy daily life of a long-distance couple. My father's few stiff responses, in this moment, clearly reveal a tsundere who is tough on the outside but soft on the inside. After all this, my father rebelled just to put himself on the dragon bed. I am absolutely obsessed with their secret, mutual, decade-spanning romance, just as I was about to slip the letter back in and pretend I hadn't seen anything. My fingertips brushed against a yellowed piece of paper at the bottom of the box. The paper was stiffer than the letter and looked like an official document. I carefully took it out. It only recorded one thing: the origin of a baby girl named Zhao Wanning, the daughter of a loyal minister, whose father died protecting Xiao Yang. My name was clearly listed. At the end of that record was another line of vermilion annotation, written with a graceful and unrestrained brushstroke. Exuding an air of supreme confidence, it was Xiao Yang's handwriting, bestowed the name Wanning, entrusted to Zhao Ce. Thus, a Ce has a daughter, and my heart is at ease. I'm actually not my father's biological child. What are you doing? Someone tapped me on the shoulder from behind, startling me so much that I quickly turned around. Xiao Jingxi, what are you doing? You scared me to death. I saw you spacing out here, and you didn't even notice me coming over. What's wrong? I'm telling you. I actually found out I'm not my dad's biological child. What's the big deal? I'm not biological either. Then who are you? I was adopted by the emperor from the imperial clan. Alright, but I had to confirm with my father whether it was true. I grabbed Xiao Jingxi and rushed straight to my father's bedchamber. The hall was as warm as spring, with wisps of incense curling in the air. My father was reclining on the soft couch, his mouth slightly agape, while Xiao Yang, looking refreshed and spirited, was picking up a peeled purple grape to feed him. The scene was as nauseating as it was glaring. Startled by the sudden intrusion, my father jolted upright from the couch, nearly choking on the grape in his mouth. Ahum, WN, Wanning, and Jingxi. What brings you here? My father's face instantly flushed red, his eyes darting around, and his words stumbling out. In contrast, Xiao Yang simply wiped his hands and then looked up at us. You finally found out. A few days later than I expected. I don't care what he says. I hand the letter to my father. Father, am I really not your biological child? My father opens his mouth, looks at me, his eyes filled with panic. Wanning, whether you are my biological child or not, you are my only daughter. Xiao Yang reached out and pressed my flustered father back onto the soft couch, then walked over to me. He was quite confused about it back then. So let me tell you the story. He picked up the piece of paper, glanced at it, and let out a light chuckle. That's right, Wanning, your father is the descendant of a loyal minister who died saving me back in the day. Back then, ACE repeatedly achieved military successes at the border, and the court was flooded with memorials urging him to marry. I didn't like it. He said this as if it were the most natural thing in the world. I didn't want ACE to marry, have children, and spend his life with another woman. Coincidentally, General Chen, who had rendered great service in protecting the emperor, died in battle, leaving behind an orphaned daughter still in swaddling clothes. He paused, his gaze falling on me. So, I set up a scheme and had someone place you on ACE's usual path, so he could find you. This way, Zhao Ce now has a daughter, cutting off any thoughts of others trying to force their daughters on him. And I can finally rest easy. I took a deep breath, suppressing the turmoil in my heart, and looked back at Xiao Yang. So, this rebellion was also part of your plan. I want a CE to return to the capital, Xiao Yang said with an air of nonchalance. But he is the general of the border garrison and cannot return to the capital without an imperial decree. What should we do? There must be a reason. So I wrote to him, saying that I had inadvertently fallen into a trap. Chancellor Zhu and the imperial guards have colluded, and the court is now in their hands. I will soon pass away. As soon as a CE heard this, he immediately raised a rebellion. He led his troops all the way back, and I ordered the local commanders to put up a little resistance. He entered the capital without shedding a drop of blood, and I was forced to abdicate. From then on, he became the emperor, and I became the only consort in his harem. We could see each other every day, no longer having to endure the pain of longing. So, both Xiao Jingxi and I were merely tools and NPCs in their love story. My father was completely dumbfounded. What he thought was destined by fate and exceptionally capable turned out to be nothing but his wife. No, his husband, giving him an invincible cheat code. His pride as a fierce frontier general and a straight man shattered into pieces under Xiao Yang's affectionate gaze. My father couldn't figure it out. He could have been eating large pieces of meat and drinking from big bowls of wine at the border, occasionally beating up those clueless barbarians. What a carefree and unrestrained life that would have been. And now, during the day, he had to endure the civil officials lecturing him with classical allusions on how to behave, and at night, he was tutored by the deposed emperor, who would devour him completely. He pointed at Xiao Yang, his lips trembling for a long time. Unable to utter a complete sentence, Xiao Yang stepped forward, considerately trying to support him, but my father avoided him as if he were the plague. You are shameless, my father finally roared, with a hint of grief and indignation, mixed with a touch of grievance. Xiao Yang, you set me up. Xiao Yang smiled, a trace of triumphant indulgence in his grin. Ace, is offering the kingdom as a betrothal gift not enough? My father was so furious his chest heaved violently. Pointing at him and then at himself, am I lacking that little bit of power you have? Wasn't I perfectly content being a local tyrant at the border? But you had to drag me to the capital, forcing me to review memorials all day, and at night, he abruptly stopped, his face flushing red, likely recalling those unbearable nights. Finally, through gritted teeth, he forced out a grievance filled with blood and tears. You shameless. Xiao Yang, upon hearing this, not only didn't get angry, but instead laughed. He reached out and pinched my father's chin, forcing him to lift his head. Then, right in front of us two juniors, he gently pecked him on the lips. Yes, I am shameless. But isn't it exactly this shameless side of me that you like? Ace, Xiao Jingzi and I exchanged a silent glance, then simultaneously took a small step back and quickly slipped away. Ever since learning the truth, my father has completely shut himself off. He locked himself in the imperial study, refusing to see anyone, and even suspended the morning court sessions. The entire court was in a state of panic, all believing that the new emperor, who had just ascended the throne, was already in poor health and would soon pass away. Xiao Yang, however, remained calm. He cooked every day, preparing my father's favorite dishes, and brought them to the door of the imperial study. "Ce, open the door, it's time to eat." There was no movement inside. Ace, these are the newly made peach blossom pastries I made. Would you like to try one? There was still complete silence inside. Jiao Ce, if you don't open the door, I'm coming in. My father inside finally reacted. Get lost. Xiao Yang stood at the door holding the meal for a long time, the smile on his face disappearing for the first time. He had been coaxing from dawn till dusk for 3 consecutive days. My father stubbornly refused to open the door. Xiao Jingzi and I stood in the distance, watching this scene with mixed emotions. By the third night, Xiao Yang's patience had likely been completely exhausted. He placed the food box on the ground and faced the tightly shut door, his expression unnervingly calm. Jiao Ce, I'll count to 3. If you don't open the door, you'll face the consequences. 1, 2. There was still no movement from inside. Xiao Yang's gaze turned completely cold. He didn't count to 3, he simply took 2 steps back, then raised his foot and delivered a powerful kick to the imperial study door made of golden Nanmu wood. Bang! With a loud crash, the lock snapped instantly. Xiao Yang walked in with an expressionless face, then closed the door behind him. Soon, my father's furious roar came from inside. Xiao Yang, what are you doing? Let me go, you bastard. Then, there was a chaotic sound of tables and chairs falling over, with brushes, ink, paper, and inkstones flying everywhere. Mixed with the sound of fabric tearing, Xiao Jingzi and I looked at each other and silently retreated several dozen feet. This is a domestic violence scene. I don't know how long this battle lasted, but I do know that the next day, my father finally went to court. He changed into a dragon robe with an extremely high collar, but it still couldn't conceal the clear bite mark on his neck. His walking posture was even more peculiar than a few days ago. He almost shuffled his way onto the dragon throne. Throughout the entire process, he wore a dark expression, exuding a terrifying aura of strangers stay away, acquaintances don't disturb. Every single civil and military official in the court saw it. Everyone looked at each other. their eyes filled with a complex emotion that said, I understand everything. But I don't dare speak up. Speak if you have business to report, if not, the court is dismissed. An old man with a white beard tremblingly stepped forward. Your Majesty, I have a matter to report. Regarding the funding for the Water Conservancy repairs in the south, the Ministry of Revenue and the Ministry of Works are at a stalemate. I humbly request Your Majesty's wise decision. As soon as the words fell, the Minister of Revenue immediately refuted. Minister Lee, you are mistaken. This year, the northern frontier has suffered a severe drought, and provisions are tight. Military funds absolutely cannot be cut. Where would we find extra money to repair some useless river channels? The Minister of Works was displeased. Minister Zhong, Water Conservancy is the foundation of the state. Every year you say there's no money, but when floods surge and drown thousands of acres of fertile land, what will your Ministry of Revenue use to compensate? What about me? Throughout the entire morning court session, my father was completely dazed, watching two old men, whose combined age was nearly 150, on the verge of a real fight in the court. My father's temples throbbed violently. He raised his hand to rub his forehead, looking as if his head was splitting with pain. Argue, all you do is argue, squabbling over a few taels of silver all day long. My father couldn't help but roar under his breath. Everyone fell silent once again. At that moment, a censor wearing a tall hat and holding a jade tablet stepped forward, his neck stiff and his expression full of righteous determination. Your Majesty, his voice boomed like a great bell, how can one sigh and complain while seated upon the dragon throne? Since ancient times, emperors have been expected to maintain composure even in the face of mountains collapsing before them. Your Majesty has been listless lately, with frivolous words and actions that undermine the imperial dignity. If this continues, the state will cease to be a state. I implore Your Majesty to adjust your attire, correct your conduct, and set an example for all the people. These words were spoken with resounding force and conviction. All eyes were fixed on the dragon throne. My father slowly raised his head, his hollow gaze sweeping over the dense crowd below before finally settling on the radiant Xiao Yang. At that moment, sorrow welled up within him. He sprang to his feet abruptly. Under the watchful eyes of all the civil and military officials, he tore the imperial crown from his head and hurled it fiercely to the ground. Whoever wants to be this lousy emperor can have it. I'm done, every day. I'm exhausted like a dog reviewing memorials, and at night, I still have to pay the public grain. I've had enough. I'm going back to the border to drink and eat meat. All the civil and military officials, including me, were completely stunned. We've seen officials resign, but never an emperor resigning. An elderly minister with white hair and beard tremblingly stepped forward. Your Majesty, please calm your anger. If you do not become the emperor, then to whom will the throne be passed? Good question. Everyone looked at my father. My father glanced around, his eyes searching through the crowd. He saw the former crown prince Xiao Jingxi, who trembled in fear and shook his head frantically. Then, his gaze fell on me, who happened to be standing in the front row watching the commotion. He grabbed my wrist, pulled me out of the crowd, and then gave me a hard push, shoving me right in front of the dragon throne. I stumbled and nearly fell. My father cleared his throat, pointed at me, and declared to the entire court with unwavering confidence, "Give it to her. She's young. She can handle it. Zhao Wanning is my only daughter, and it is only right and proper that she inherits my throne." My father seemed to think this plan wasn't perfect enough, and then he noticed Xiao Jingxi standing nearby, equally dumbfounded. He slapped his thigh again. Xiao Jingxi is the former crown prince, deeply loved by the people. He pointed one finger at me and another at Xiao Jingxi. They shall be married this very day. One, an empress, the other, a royal consort. The nation is secure, perfection achieved. With that, he dusted off his hands as if he had just resolved a monumental problem. Without even sparing Xiao Yang another glance, he strode out of the hall with an air of pride and confidence. And so, I, Zhao Wanning, at the age of 16, unwittingly became the first female emperor in the history of the great Xia dynasty, and my irresponsible new father packed his bags that very day, leaving behind a casual remark, Xiao Yang and I are off to travel the world. The kingdom is in your hands now. In the first year of our reign, Xiao Jingxi and I lived in utter chaos. Although I am the daughter of a military family, I know nothing about governing a country. Although Xiao Jingxi is the former crown prince and was trained in the art of ruling, his approach to governance is completely different from mine. Our wedding night was spent arguing in the imperial study over a memorial about the drought in the northwest. The disaster relief funds must be distributed immediately. Every day we delay, hundreds more people will starve to death. I slammed the memorial on the table. Xiao Jingxi sneered, "The national treasury is empty. What are we supposed to use to distribute?" Zhao warning, "Being an emperor isn't child's play. Slamming the table won't solve the problem." "Then what do you suggest? Just watch them starve to death." I was so angry my eyes turned red. There are many ways to cut redundant officials, investigate corruption, and sell off the luxury goods of the imperial household department. It all depends on whether you, as the emperor, have the courage to take action against your own people. He leaned back in his chair, his eyes filled with disdain. I was left speechless by his words. During that period, we would almost always end up arguing whenever we exchanged more than a few words. He called me a crude and uncouth warrior with no foresight, and I called him a crown prince of a fallen kingdom, only good at empty talk. The entire palace echoed with the sound of our quarrels. The ministers trembled with fear, worried that one day we might come to blows and tear apart the newly established dynasty. The turning point came late one night. I stayed up for 3 consecutive nights working on a flood control plan, and in the end, I was so exhausted that I fell asleep directly on the pile of memorials. In a daze, I felt someone draping a coat with a faint sandalwood scent over me. I opened my eyes and saw Xiao Jingxi standing beside me, holding a document filled with annotations. "Your plan is full of flaws," he said, throwing the document in front of me. "The Yellow River changing its course affects everything with just one move. It's not something you can solve by drawing a few lines. I've already drafted a new plan for you. Take a look." I looked at the densely written proposal, filled with tiny characters, from the budget to manpower, from diversion to embankment construction. Every detail was meticulously considered. At that moment, the anger in my heart suddenly dissipated. "Thank you," I said softly. He didn't look at me, just said calmly, "I'm not helping you. I just don't want to see this country destroyed by you." From that day on, our relationship underwent a subtle change. He still had a sharp tongue, complaining every day, a dignified crown prince, having to serve you like a beast of burden. But his actions were honest. He reviewed memorials faster than anyone and handled state affairs more efficiently than anyone else. He became the most hard-working, helpful spouse in history. I handle external affairs, making final decisions and appeasing the military faction. He manages internal affairs, dealing with complex government matters and outwitting the civil officials. The two of us, an empress and a consort, worked together seamlessly, turning that chaotic nation into a well-governed state. Years have passed, and I have become a wise ruler recorded in the annals of history, and my consort, Xiao Jingxi, has become the virtuous prince praised by all among the people. Yet no one knows that every night, upon returning to the bedchamber, the first thing this virtuous prince does is prop his feet on my desk and order me around. "Zhao warning, massage my legs." "Zhao warning, I'm thirsty. I want tea brewed by your own hands." I would always laugh and scold him with a "what a character," then obediently go over to serve him. After all, without him, I'd be the one reading all these memorials. My rather unreliable retired emperor father, after traveling and enjoying the scenery for a few years, probably felt that the palace was more comfortable to live in, and swaggered back in grand style. From then on, the long quiet harem was filled every day with my father's roars and Xiao Yang's light laughter, chaotic and bustling, yet somehow heartwarmingly cozy. They brought back many novel trinkets, along with a strong aura of the Jianghu. My father, dressed in simple attire all day, would leap and bound around the palace, teasing birds one day, walking dogs the next, living more freely than anyone else. Xiao Yang stayed by his side, watching his antics and smiling for him, occasionally reining him in with a single, effortless remark when his mischief went too far. For example, When my father wanted to uproot all the prized peonies in the imperial garden to plant cabbages, Xiao Yang simply said, "Ace, if you plant cabbages, you won't be getting out of bed for the next 3 days." My father immediately wilted. That day was another full moon night. After finishing the last memorial, I stretched and suddenly felt a whim, recalling that night from many years ago. Somehow, I felt an inexplicable urge to eavesdrop on my father's again, to relive the shock from back in the day. I dismissed the palace attendants, changed into a set of light and comfortable clothes, and stealthily made my way to the wall of their bedchamber, as familiar with the route as ever. Just as I crouched down, ready to use my old trick again, I felt a gust of wind behind me. In an instant, someone grabbed me from behind, lifting me off the ground. Startled, I was about to cry for help when I heard a familiar, deep chuckle right by my ear. "Your Majesty attends to numerous affairs of state every day, yet still has the energy to visit the Grand Emperor's bedchamber at night. It seems I haven't been diligent enough." It was Xiao Jingxi. His warm breath brushed against my neck, sending a shiver through me. My face flushed, and I struggled, saying, "What nonsense are you talking about? Let me down at once." "I won't let go." He held me even tighter, his voice carrying a hint of danger. Having caught a wild cat eavesdropping, I naturally have to take it back for a thorough interrogation. Before I could even retort, he scooped me up in his arms and strode toward our own bedchamber. Moonlight spilled over his handsome profile. He lowered his head, leaned close to my ear, and spoke word by word. "State affairs are pressing, but family rules cannot be neglected. Tonight, your husband must properly punish the eavesdropping, Your Majesty." In the distance, the lights in my father's bedchamber were still bright, and faintly, I could still hear my father's vigorous shouts, and I, carried by my consort, was brought back to the home that belongs to us. This absurd beginning ultimately led to a stable ending. I think this is quite fine. Across the vast land, he shares the burden with me. The years are long, but I have him to share them with. As for those two unreliable fathers, let them continue their love-hate relationship. Adding a bit of amusement to my otherwise uneventful life as an emperor, after hearing the 2 stories above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.